Hello, I'm Jeremy. Today we're going to be taking a look at a game by the name of Quacks and Company. This is a spin-off or a sequel to a famous game, Quacks of Quindlenberg, from the designer Wolfgang Warsch. This is put out in Germany by Schmidt-Spiel, but they are going to be publishing this in the US relatively soon. I believe it's going to have worldwide distribution in a lot of different languages. Although the original German base game is language independent, there are English rules on the publisher's websites. The game is, like I said, a children's game. The box says ages 6 and up. It plays in about 25 minutes or so for 2 to 4 players. And it's simply a race game where players are going to be drawing tiles from their bag to determine how far they move along a track and getting better tiles over the course of the game by buying them. I'll take a few minutes to show you how the game plays, and then I'll come back, give you my final thoughts on Quacks and Company. So the first thing you're going to notice with Quacks and Company is for a children's game, you're going to get quite a lot of components in the box. Each player is going to get an individual player board, which shows their animal. They'll have a player pawn on the board, which is essentially just a score track. They'll get a bag that they're going to be drawing chits from. They'll start with some chits in there. The back of the player board shows you what you put in the bag at the start of the game. And then there will be a market, which is the bottom of the box, where you're going to be able to buy your new chits from, so you can see the cost of those, which is always going to be gems, is listed on the board, and this organizes those pretty nicely. And then finally, you'll have some dice. Certain things will let you roll the dice, as well as these explanation tiles for what the various chit powers are. So they're all depicted with pictures instead of text, which makes sense since it's a children's game. And the game is relatively straightforward. It's simply a race. You're going to be controlling your animal, trying to be the first player to make it all the way up to the town of Quindlenberg, and whoever does that first is going to win. The board's two-sided. There's a short and a long side. This is a long side, so it simply just has more spaces on it than the other side of the board, and you could just scale how long a game you want to play when you're picking the side of the board. But what you're going to do on your turn is extraordinarily simple. All you're going to do is take from your bag a chit and draw it. There's several types in there. This is essentially the sleepweed, I believe. This is like the bad thing. All that you do when you draw this is nothing happens. And you put it on your player board. You can see here the animal has 3 spaces for the sleepweeds. Once you draw one of those, nothing happens. When you draw your third, you'll get to refill your bag and buy more chits. So that would literally be all that player does on their turn. Just draw 1 chip. Now if this player drew, they would draw 1 chip. Here they got a corn, and you can see it's a little corn, and it has a number 1 on it. What that means is they'll put that on their board, not into one of the sleeping spaces. They'll advance the number that's shown on the chip, so just 1 space. And then they'll look at what the corn tile does, and you can see here the corn tile lets them roll the white die, and then they'll execute whatever it says on the white die. So in this case, they roll the white die, and they get to go 3 more spaces. It could also give them a new chit. It could also give them a diamond, which they could use to buy chip, I guess a ruby, or various other things. So in that case, they would just go 1, 2, 3 spaces. Then it would be back to the other player's turn. So unlike the normal Quacks game, you're only going to be drawing 1 chip from your bag on your turn, and then it's the other player's turn. If this player drew, maybe they get an apple. So the apple lets them go 2 spaces. They simply go 1, 2. They look at what the apple says, and it says that if they would get 1 ruby, except if they're on a circle space, which they happen to be on, then they're going to get 2 rubies. So they would simply take 2 rubies from the box, add them to their display. So this will just keep going back and forth until a player gets their 3rd chit, their 3rd sleeping chit. Again, normally they would do nothing, but when you draw your 3rd one, all that you're going to do is you're going to take the number of rubies that you have. You can't carry these over from turn to turn. Essentially, you're forced to spend as many rubies as you'd like to spend right now, discard the rest, and you could buy chits from the display. So you can see here, from the display, there are the chits with the various powers on them, with different numbers on them. So chit that lets you move 4 spaces would cost 3 rubies, whereas a chit that only lets you move 1 space will only cost 1. There are also, for example, these up here, which let you move 8 spaces but don't have any special power. They cost 5 rubies. And the other ones have various powers. And the game has rules that you could keep the variety of the chits as simple or more complex depending on what age of children you're playing with. But when you're buying these, you could basically buy each color of chit once, only one chit of a given color. So you couldn't buy both a 4 and a 1 red apple. You could buy just one of those two, but you could buy multiple chips if you're getting different colors, provided you have enough rubies. Once you decide what chits you're going to buy, you take any chits on your player board as well as your newly bought one, throw them in your bag, shake up your bag, and then you'll be ready for your next turn. So that's pretty much it. So the game flow is literally just draw a tile, do a power, unless it's a sleep weed. If it's your third sleep weed, you get to buy chits and refill your bag. And it goes until somebody reaches the end. So just to show you what some of these special powers do on the chits. So like I said, generally they're going to let you move a couple spaces as well. But this one, you get to roll that die that I just showed. This one, you move to the next swirly space, so the next special space. This one, you get clovers, and whenever you refill your bag, you'll get to move forward a space for each clover that you've collected. This is that you can, this one you just take the rubies. This one, I forget what that one actually does. Oh, you get to move the number of spaces of rubies that you have at that moment that you draw that chit. And this one here is that you could put a chit back into your bag. There's also alternate powers for each of these various symbols. They just slightly mix it up, so you could play with the advanced powers, which I guess would be considered these, or I suppose you could just mix and match those. So this one, there's a separate die that you could roll, has different things on it. This one, it lets you draw another chip from your bag. This one, you simply upgrade the blueberries until you get to the 8 chip without a power. So it's just every time, if you draw the 2, you get to turn it into a 4, so next time it'll be more powerful. That sort of thing. So this one you just move 2 spaces for if you're on the swirl. Here you get rubies based on the power of the chip that you got. So they're all relatively straightforward, which makes sense because this is a kid's game, but there is a little bit of a variety in the pack, and you could easily see how they could expand this out by giving you new types of chips if they decide they wanted to do that in the future. But really simply put, this is just a race game to the end. Whoever's going to basically be able to buy the better chips first will probably be the person who wins. And that's how you're going to play Quacks and Company. Okay, so that is Quacks and Company, and as you can see, this is a very, very light game. It's a children's game through and through. I'm a big fan of the original Quacks of Quindlenberg. Had I known quite how simple this was, I probably wouldn't have ordered this for myself. I don't have children. This is really a game that you want to play with children, I think, to get the most enjoyment out of it. Although when it came, I didn't see the rules before it came. When it came, we played it a few times just to kick the wheels, so to speak, and we actually had a relatively decent amount of fun considering how simple the game is. It is inherently fun, obviously, to be pulling chits out of a bag. That's why the original Quacks was such a hit. Here, there's not really a press your luck element so much because you're drawing until you hit 3. It's not a choice of if you want to keep drawing or if you're just going to stop. You're just drawing 1 chit per turn. So you're at the mercies of luck. There's a little bit of strategy for sure in how you're going to build your bag. And certainly if you're playing on the longer side of the map, you could come up with a combo that, you collect a lot of chits because you're getting you buy a lot of those diamond chips, and then you buy the chit, for example, that lets you advance based on how many diamonds you've collected at the time. So you could try and bend the luck to your will. There is a little bit of room for strategy for this, but this is definitely a children's game. It's not a game for gamers. I wouldn't suggest that anybody who's playing this without kids goes and buys this hoping that they're going to get a quicker version of Quacks. It's really not that. It's almost more akin to something like Candyland, I would say, in terms of how it plays out. That being said, the production of this is awesome. If I had kids and played with kids regularly, I would absolutely want to keep this game. This is, I think, an extremely nice, like I said, extremely nice production, extremely good distillation of the rules from the original Quacks into a lighter version that the kids would be able to understand and, play very well. And I think that, in a perfectly just world, this game would, essentially fire Candyland. There would be no need to play Candyland when this exists. It's just a really cute game. It's exciting to, try and, to pull things from the bag. It's tactile. It has really, charming art. And there's variety built into the box, So as a kid's game, this is really exceptional. And, I fully recommend it if you're going to be playing it with kids. I would say up until maybe about 8 or 9, then once you get beyond that, they probably would be able to handle a little bit more advanced game than this. But for younger kids, the box says 6 and up. I think and you could probably even go younger if you're willing to guide the kids through the steps of their turn. This is really great. It's going to be a game that they enjoy, I would imagine, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it as a kids game. It's one of the most charming kids games I've seen in some time, and it's really impressive, like how much of the original Quacks, there's a deck building element, so to speak, or a bag building element, really does come through, considering how simple the game is, and that's impressive. It's not just you're at the mercy of a die roll. There are absolutely decisions to be made when you're deciding what you're going to be buying, and that's kind of fun. It lets you differentiate your strategy from other players' strategy. So like I said, I wouldn't get this if you're a gamer looking for a follow-up to Quacks, but if you have children and you like Quacks and you think your kids would like that part of the exciting part of Quacks, which is pulling things from the bag, absolutely would be able to recommend this to you. So those are my thoughts on Quacks and Company, and thanks for watching.